Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, and I'm reporting live from a new location. I'm at the Edward Muntz Library on the campus of the University of Texas at Tyler, and I will be reporting from here every Tuesday night this semester because I've gone back for my master's program in art history. I'm a graduate assistant, and I feel like a celebrity because all the students are going, "Oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" It's really weird being on the other side, but it is fantastic. And we have double celebration tonight because tonight is Julia Brewer Daly, who's going to be here with her new book, The Fifth Daughter of Thorn Ranch. But it's her birthday. You all, she came on her birthday. Mine's Sunday, so I am very happy. So what I've got right now, wait a minute, one more person's coming in. Oh, Mike, he's brand new. So let me get him in real quick. Mike, he's got an interesting story. So he's a brand new member. Mike, can you hear me? Turn your volume on. Yeah? Ask to unmute. Okay. He's still muted. I'm going to ask him to unmute. Okay. Let's see if he will do that. I asked him. Anyway, while we're waiting for Mike to get on, I hope he can hear me. We have Julia Brewer Daly. It's her birthday. So what I would like to begin with on this auspicious occasion for my fellow Texan who's gone all out and looking quite smashing, by the way, I would like us all to sing happy birthday. So turn your mute buttons on, and I'll get it started and try to follow me on key. Okay, we ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Daly. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's
Tell
the last of the 60s this year for me, so I'm excited to be here, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate than with my fellow Pupwood Queens.
You know what is amazing to me? You don't even look like you're 30 in this picture. I'm telling you, you look so young.
There are filters, Kathy. There are lots of filters you can use.
Well, I don't use any of them because, I had an author come, and I won't mention her name, but she had sent me a photo and I posted it, and I thought she looked like the photo, and she was like 50 years older than the photo. And
That's the way I am. When I show up anywhere, they think, wow, are you Julia's mother?
Well, I earned these wrinkles. It's the map of my life, and I always change my photo, not because I'm vain, because I want people to see that I'm aging, and aging faster than normal because I'm going to be 67 Sunday. So we're in the same boat, but we are thrilled it's your birthday and you're here with us. And joining us tonight is Janet Oakley. She's up in Bellingham, Washington. And then we've got Kathy Ramsberger. Are you at home, Kathy? She's on mute.
Home. I had a wonderful lunch party Saturday night, and I start traveling Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, she has been I've been seeing all the great posts from bookstores and everything. So congratulations. She'll be coming up in the queue. And Laura Bernhardt is here tonight and from up in Oklahoma City. And Laura, you've got WriterCon going on, right? Coming up?
That is coming up Labor Day weekend. Yes. So we are coming down to the wire. Yep.
And I know just exactly how much work that is because almost 24 years of running Girlfriend Weekend, you and your husband, William Bernhardt, I want to talk to you about that because I'd like you to get you guys back on, both of you, on board this year for Girlfriend Weekend. So call me when you can and we'll talk about that. And then Suzanne Kamada is here all the way from Japan. So yay. And Suzanne, she just sent me two of the most gorgeous books I've ever seen, new books. You're the most voracious reader and writer I've ever seen. But I got them so fast. Did you send them through Amazon? What did you
Yeah,
do?
I did. There are lots of hurdles you have to leap through these days to send a package from Japan. Like you have to have a QR code and you fill out forms and the computer and all that. So I just did it the easy way.
Well, I got the package from you faster than I get packages from my friends a half an hour away. So I was really impressed. And tonight we have Mike. I don't even want to try to pronounce your name, Mike.
DeSico.
How is it? What is it?
DeSico.
DeSico. Well,
Like
I got to tell you,
DeSico.
yeah, and he's an author, and I love your Burger King crown.
Thank you. We
I
went
see
to
that-
great lengths to get this thing.
Yeah.
I have a
didn't even think to
backup
leave 'em
if
out
this one
anymore.
falls apart.
Oh, no, it's fine. I have to tell the story about you. You are the brother of one of my friends when I was attending Emporia State University. Monica, and her maiden name was Rizzo, and
Right.
I were became friends in a English class, and went on trips with her. And then after I got married and moved to California, I lost touch with her. I heard from her just a couple months ago, and then I found out that she has a brother who's a writer. So I did not know that. So we are really excited about having you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. We're not biological brother and sister, but I moved in with her family for my senior year in high school. And so that's how we treat each other.
Well, that's the way I feel about Monica. She was always she wasn't old enough, of course, to be my mother, but she was like the older big sister. She took me under wing because I was all by myself and broke most of the time when I went to Emporia State, but she was fantastic. We'll talk at the end, but right now it's Julia's. She's the birthday queen. And we loving her look. And she just tell everybody here, because there's a few that may not know your backstory. Tell a little bit about you and your writing life.
I have only been writing novels for a few years. I was an English major in college, master's degree in education, and I always had to write in my occupations. I was in communications at several universities and public relations director of the State Department of Education in Mississippi. And then I was the executive director of the Craftsmen's Guild of Mississippi, and we had 300 members, very talented artists from 19 different states. So I wrote their stories, but I had to learn this strange animal called fiction. And I took lots of craft classes when I moved to Texas because we were able to take audit courses when I worked at Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi, and we could take writing courses as part of our compensation. So I sat in on a writing course and actually wrote a few chapters of my first book when I was there. And when we moved to Texas, I found those chapters when I was unpacking. And I said, if I don't write this book now, it's never going to be written. So that was my first book, which had a thread of memoir running through it called No Names to Be Given, because I'm an adopted child from a maternity home in New Orleans. And that book was about 3 women who met at that maternity home to relinquish their babies for adoption. So it had a lot of memoir in the book. And then I became so enamored with the Texas ranches when we moved to Texas that I wanted to write about Texas. I mean, it's like a country of its own. And
they think everybody here thinks it's their own country too.
Yes, and I actually dedicated the book to Texas because of that. But, the generational ranches, people have lived on them, for 5, 6 generations, and they're being chopped up into subdivisions now. And it just breaks my heart, these vast pieces of property. And we traveled to Colorado. I don't know how many of you have been to Mesa Verde National Park, but I never dreamed that we had ruins like that in the US. And when I walked over the hill and saw what looked like condos built on the side of the mountain by an ancient people, that was my inspiration for having the heiress to the largest ranch in Texas stumble upon an ancient people living on her property. Because when I asked the guide in the park, what happened to these people? Where did they go? She said, we don't know. We don't know if it was famine or drought or disease or warfare. And I said, well, if they left Colorado, they could have come to Texas. So that's where I have them living on a ranch in Texas.
That's the greatest story. You have fascinated all of us when you've come on board and talked to us at these book club meetings, because, you know, the fact that you were adopted, you know, is become a very hot button topic with the orphan trains, with Lisa Wingate's book Before We Were Yours, and then of course Judy Christie, who now lives in Colorado, and Lisa wrote the book on the stories of the people that all discovered each other from the first book, which is an amazing book. But it is, you know, adoption isn't exactly like the way we thought it was when we were kids. You know, I went to school with so many kids that were adopted. It's not even funny. And they always had names like Terry and Mary, or Melissa, and, you know, they all kind of rhymed. And it, there were so many
I
of
never
them.
knew anyone who was adopted except me. I was a
What?
strange little unicorn in my town. And if I had written No Names to Be Given 40 years ago, when I had the idea to write it, when I searched and found my birth mother, it would have been a sensation because nobody was searching and finding birth parents back then. There were no books about it. It was not touted like it is today. You know, every book you pick up now has an adoption slant in the book, it seems like. But 40 something years ago, you know, it was just unheard of to even talk about. You know, the records were sealed, and parents had birth certificates that looked like they gave birth to the child. Some of our birth certificates were even stamped with illegitimate on them. So it was a totally different time back then.
Yeah, it's really, it's really changed. But the nice thing about it is, I mean, when you think about, everybody goes, well, that's already been done. No, because every single adopted child has a different story. I mean, the young woman who was a family member that worked in my shop was adopted, and she found out she had, I think she like 8 siblings she didn't even know anything about, and they've all connected, and and they look alike. But she was the only one that was given up for adoption. And
you know, now with the DNA kits, all the commercial DNA kits, you can find out so much that some families don't want the secrets coming out. But that's been the great honor of writing that book, is hearing from people and hearing their stories. I've heard from other adoptees. I've heard from adoptive parents. I've heard from birth mothers. One birth mother wrote me and said she had just read my book, and she actually gave birth and relinquished her baby for adoption in the same maternity home where I was relinquished for adoption, where I was born. So, you know, there's some great stories out there.
wow, it kind of makes you wonder if you of the same age or not.
No, she's
No.
younger than I am.
Wow.
I have an adoption story to tell. One of my friends, I think 15 years ago, started looking for her birth mother because she has some medical issues, minor medical issues. And she found her mother, and then she found out that her mother had died in a car accident, but her grandmother was still alive, and she came from a very prominent family in Tennessee. So she ended up contacting her, I think through a reporter, to do it very discreetly and to meet this woman. And it turns out that was a blessing because she didn't know that her mother had died a long time ago, maybe a year after she was let go. And now this grandmother, the rest of her life, she died in her 80s. She knew she had a granddaughter who had a PhD in, you know, in medieval history, was a professor. So there are stories that can be really pretty amazing. I'm amazed every time I get chills every
That's
time.
why I love to pick them, because they're all so different. You know, we have a million television streaming shows on hospitals and doctors and lawyers. Why can't we have that many stories about adopted children, or even those that, you know, this people that have given their children away? So thank you for writing this story. And now you've got, oh, somebody just popped up, a cute little pup. Now we've got another new book, and without giving anything away, do you want to talk a little bit, Julie, about your new book?
Well, as I said, it's dedicated to Texas because Texas was my inspiration, is my inspiration. I dedicated it to our adopted state and what I call life's sweetest third. And I wanted the words of this story to be a testament to how grand and majestic that the citizens of Texas believe it to be. And I used the quote from John Steinbeck that said, Texas is a state of mind. Texas is an obsession. Above all, Texas is a nation in every sense of the word. And that's the majestic state that I've written about. I created this ranch of 1 million acres for this heiress in South Texas. And I've had people say, well, I think somebody would know if they had people living on their ranch. And I said, do you realize what 1 million acres looks like? People don't know what an acre looks like, but 1 million.
I hate to mow it.
A million acres is larger than New York and LA combined. And if you had mountain ranges and caverns the size of the Grand Canyon, you wouldn't know if somebody was living on the backside of one of those mountains. So I've had to let people who, especially those who live in big cities, who don't know what the acreage looks like. You know, in South Texas, they don't even say acres, they go by sections, and a section is 640 acres. So they're massive, massive pieces of property. And I wanted to see and get in my mind what a South Texas ranch looked like of that size. So I went to do my research and visited King Ranch in South Texas, which was at the time and may still be the largest ranch in Texas and maybe the country. It was 1 million acres at one time.
You know, that reminds me of the Edna Ferber book, Giant, you know, Elizabeth Taylor and
one of my favorite movies in the world.
Me too. And I love the ending. It had the best ending. But where was that film? Wasn't that filmed out in, I don't know, but it was windy and dusty and
very remote locations and
very hot.
The drought that we're in right now, you know, we haven't had rain in 4 months, and in 45 days, we've had over 100-degree, triple-digit temperatures in Texas. So I can only imagine these droughts that go on for years.
Yeah, I can't remember when it last rained here. And when I came here tonight, it was 102 on the outside temperature here in East Texas. And, you know, I kind of am envious of all my friends in Colorado right now. Like Judy Christie, she's got it made. She posted a photo of a bear out in her yard, a big bear. So, but yeah, Colorado's getting more and more inviting to me during the summertime. So now let's talk a little bit about the process of your writing. You said you had this book for 40 years, the first one, and then you found it and started working on it. The first book took you how long?
It took me a couple of years to write, and I became hooked on the editing process. And of course, they say that writing is rewriting, and there was a lot of rewriting in that book. And I really became hooked on editors and had about 6 editors for that book. But I was at a writing retreat that is put on by Laura Bernhardt and her husband. And I met them, and I was talking to Laura, and I said, I want to find a small publisher to publish this book. And she said, well, I'm interested. So Laura Bernhardt is my publisher for both of
That's,
books.
I've forgotten that. You know,
But
Laura.
one of the smartest things I ever did. I love working with Julia. She's amazing.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes. Anybody that works with Laura Bernhardt is in for a treat because
Yeah.
we got to know each other real well in Nashville at the Southern Festival for the book. And she is a doll,
She is.
absolute, love her. I'm dying to meet her husband, so I want him to really come to Girlfriend Weekend. And I need to, I've got his new book and it's great. By the way, I want to pick it. So, but I don't know, um, you have the Christmas book, but the other book, is it going to be done in 2024, Laura?
I'm behind. I'm behind. We've talked about this. I've been really kind of knocked back by a breast cancer diagnosis this year, and I'm not.
Master's program. You just got your
Yes,
master's.
I finished. I managed to finish that. I kind of kept trying to go full throttle, even though I was stuck in low gear, and I'm kind of paying for it now. I'm still tired, and I'm trying.
Take it easy. We've got the Christmas book, and I really want you guys talking together about your Writers Con and everything that you're doing. So
And she works full time too.
Yes, she does. And tell everybody quickly what you do, Laura, because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'm an academic advisor. So I've worked I worked at a community college for a number of years, and then 3 years ago, almost to the day actually, I had the opportunity to switch over to a four-year college and move into an academic advisor position, and that's been great. I like higher ed, and I was inspired to, and encouraged by the workplace to go ahead and get that master's degree, which I did. So it's been good.
I'm thrilled that you two are working together. That explains a lot of why, this Mutual Admiration Society. But anybody that comes into contact with either one of you, or really any of the people that are here, Mike, I don't know you well, but I'll get to know you. But everybody else that's here, I know very well, and angels, every single one of them, and some of the best authors in the country, as far as I'm concerned. And
a lot of them I have interviewed for my podcast, and they are amazing. I just today finished my 189th interview for the podcast, and just listening to author stories in this generous community is just a great honor for me.
Are the podcasts still for over 50 first book?
It doesn't have to be their first book, but they had to have published their first book after the age of 50. They can have many books after that, but the premise of the podcast is that they waited until after 50 to publish their first book. And there are a lot of us out here. I'm booked through spring of 2024. And I kept thinking, Laura wants me to get back to writing. And I'm thinking, I record 2 a week and launch 2 a week. It has really taken over my life, but it's been a great honor to listen to these stories.
It really is. And everybody talks about how they don't want to Zoom, but I can tell you, I've got over 500 videos now up on the Pulpwood Queen channel of our events and stuff, and the Girlfriend Weekends and everything. I've gotten to know the authors better through Zoom than I did from Girlfriend Weekend, because I'd only really see them once a year. And now I see an author every week. So it's like a big thrill. And I've got several of them that are on tonight that are coming up in the queue. Lovelace, haven't seen you in a while. Great to have you on board. And, but almost, every week we have somebody hopefully new, and we're trying to get all our new members. You guys, we've just picked up a ton of new members, and I'm working really hard and trying to get them to jump in, because if I can do this from campus while I'm going to school full-time for my master's, I think everybody can make a little bit of time. It's just an hour out of your life each week. And I know it's a commitment, but it is so worth it, because you guys are the best friends I've ever made in my life. So you're talking about the podcast and how it's kind of taking over. So do you think at some point you will stop writing, or are you just going to be more further apart from your
I have an outline for my third book, and I've always wanted to kill off an ex-husband, so I might do that in the third book.
Well, I bet there'll be a lot of people that want to read that book. Well, maybe we could have you do to get you in the theme of things for Girlfriend Weekend. Maybe we could have you do a live podcast from Girlfriend Weekend.
Yes,
And
I could do
wouldn't that
that.
be fun?
I'm going to be
And
one of the presenters at WriterCon, so I'm looking forward to seeing Laura in person again pretty soon.
maybe we could have you do a podcast. I'm thinking off the top of my head here with William and Laura at Girlfriend Weekend. What do you
Sure,
think of
I'd be
that?
happy to interview them. Turn the
Let's
tables on Mr. Barnhart.
let's do it. I can't wait. That sounds like a plan. What do you think, Laura? Think we can get Bill to do it with you?
I'm in. I bet if I ask very nicely, he'll say okay. He's had me on his podcast a few times.
Yeah, I've been on
Promoting,
his, so that was fun.
promoting
Yeah.
WriterCon and interviewing some authors that will be at WriterCon, and we're actually adding ReaderCon this year as well. So after the writers portion of the conference ends, we're adding in a fourth day this year on Labor Day that will open the doors to the public and bring all the readers in to the authors who are there.
So one's going to be on Labor Day and one's going to be on Memorial Day weekend.
It's all over Labor Day weekend. So Friday
Oh,
through
Labor Day.
Sunday is the 3 days of the intensive writing conference, and then we celebrate on Monday by
But the ReaderCon, is it going to be on the same weekend too?
on actual Labor Day. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, that sounds like a plan. Well, let me get through school and we'll see what we can do. I would love to come. And you do a cruise too. So did you go, Julie, on a cruise?
No, I didn't get to go with them on the cruise, but everything they do is first class, so I can vouch for that. The writing conference was the first one I had been to, and I just signed on for every writing retreat that I could go to, because when you can take a class in the morning, have lunch with authors, and write furiously all afternoon and not have to walk the dogs or fix dinner for anyone, it's just a special time. So I do love a writing retreat.
I do too. When I was working on my first book, I went to every memoir one I could go to, and I got some really great advice from Pat Conroy, Jeanette Walls, and Jan Reed, who's Texas legend, who was with Texas Monthly. But anyway, you have had a very interesting writing life and educational life. And if you had to do anything over, would you do anything different?
I don't think so. I have a lot of regrets in my life, but nothing about professional careers. And I think that we're supposed to be on the path that we're supposed to be on, and timing is everything. I couldn't have written these stories when I was 30 or even 40. I had to wait. And I think our stories over 50 are much richer and have a lot of hindsight and perspective in them that the young people don't have. And I'm very amazed by young people who can write in their early 20s and 30s. But I think those of us who have lived a little longer can really add a lot of richness to the work.
Absolutely. Life experiences just bring a fuller bodied, like wine, to taste. So yeah, everybody, I think it's amazing. And I think if all publishers could be like Laura and Bill, then, we would have some really terrific books. But unfortunately, a lot of the publishing dollars go to the latest flavor of the day, the celebrity of the week, the one that has the biggest fan base. And I just want a good story. I mean, I just want to hear a good story. And that's why I pick authors over and over, because usually if they've written one book, I've seen so many. I mean, Lisa Wingate, we were with her from the start, and her big break was her 30th book. 30th.
Well, they say that the agents don't want to take a chance on writers over 50 because they don't think we have many books left in us. But the authors that I'm interviewing have been very prolific. And once they've written their first after 50, they really can churn some wonderful stories out after that. I'm interviewing people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who are still writing beautiful work. So I think it's like swimming. I think we can do
Yes.
it the rest of our lives. And I think there are lots of stories, and those agents and publishers are missing out if they don't take an opportunity to sign someone over the age of 50.
I just received an email from Leila Meacham, who's a Texas author from San Antonio that passed away. Her husband, Dick, said her book's going to be coming up. They're finishing up her last book. And she didn't even start writing until she was 70. So, you know, we just need to understand that everything within its time. And we're all put on these paths. And I feel like all of everybody here, we were meant to meet in all these connections. I mean, that's the thing that really gets me excited when I see authors who come to Girlfriend Weekend who never knew each other, then becoming best friends and writing back and forth. That's so exciting. What's the coolest thing you would like to share with others on joining the book club that you have experienced? Because I'm always amazed that, it wasn't until the Pulpit Queen celebrates 20 years that I even understood what people were getting out of Girlfriend Weekend or convention. Well, is there something that comes to mind for you?
Well, absolutely. When I went to Girlfriend Weekend, I I saw people from my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi there.
Oh,
There were there were groups there who've been coming to every single one of the weekends that you've had. Johnny Webb and her crew, So I didn't even know when I was living in Jackson. Johnny is a craftsperson,
yes,
and I
she's
knew her
very
as a potter. She's a ceramicist, and I didn't know that she was in the Pulpwood Queens until I saw her at one of the weekends. So I've been surprised at how many people that I know who are already in the organization, but it's like a reunion, a family reunion. When you don't see somebody for a long time and you get to meet them at the weekend, it's a great time.
It's like a book family reunion. And, the Jackson chapter used to be the biggest chapter, but they split because they got so big. They come together for certain things like when they go to Lemuria.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got Johnny and Brownie running one chapter, and then I've got my other two girls running. One's in Madison, but they come together. But it was just it's hard when they get really big. But I think our biggest chapter right now is in Beaufort, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And it just keeps growing. Baytown, Katy, they have huge chapters, but most of the chapters are smaller. Some are even two, like Lisa Hodgkin has up in Virginia, has her and her best friend. So, a book club is when two people or more can discuss a book. So we
Well,
break all the
I've
rules.
zoomed in. I've zoomed in to many of those chapters, and it's been great fun to be in their living rooms. I didn't even know what Zoom was until the pandemic, and
Me
we
either.
started using this Zoom, and now it can take us all around the world. I've been in people's living rooms in London and Australia and France, and it's just been a great time.
It has. Suzanne, what has been your greatest experience coming in? She comes in almost every week from Japan, which blows. I go, we really are international because here's Suzanne. Yeah.
Actually, I'm still like employed full time, so I can't come every single week. But I remember when you first started the Public Queens, like maybe 25 years ago, and thinking how cool it was, and it was kind of a dream to be.
Really? I didn't know you knew
Yeah.
about us back then.
I think I used to subscribe to the Oxford American, so maybe I read about it there.
That's the very first magazine story was a hairdresser to the authors, and that's when John Grisham was the publisher. Yeah, they came to my grand opening, and when they called me up and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm opening a hair salon bookstore." And they go, "Oh, okay, we'll call you back." I thought I'd never hear from them again. And then they called me back and they said, "We're going to cover it for the magazine." I about had a heart attack, and they did. So that's pretty cool. So, well, we all have stories about it. And the best part about it is in this world when, I don't know, 500,000 books are coming out like every week. It's ridiculous. There's nobody really helping the first book authors, or the authors that are maybe famous in the area they're from, but nobody else in the country or out of the country knows who they are. So I'm trying to connect all the dots. I love to play that connect the dot game. So by connecting the dots, I want to get everybody on the same page that no matter what you're reading, these stories are going to be entertaining, enlightening, and entertaining no matter where you are in the world. And it's also building bridges. So whether you're reading about Julia and her ranch in Texas, or you're reading about your latest book, you've got coming out in Japan, it's fascinating to me. I don't even know how this happened. I was just always this little introverted reader. And then I just wanted to be in a book club so bad. And when the local book club wouldn't let me join, I kind of got blackballed. I thought, well, I'll start my own chapter. You guys have to read my book, but
to answer your question though, like the thing that I've gotten most out of the pulpit joining the pulpit is learning about all these amazing books that I probably wouldn't have learned about otherwise. So thank you for that.
Well, it's
and that's what I try to do. I've looked at your ability to bring us all together and to tout all of these novels and authors, and I wanted to pay it forward. And I thought, well, I'll do about 10 or 12 podcasts, and I will be able to say that I've paid it forward to my community of writers. And it has just taken over my life because there are literally so many of us who are not receiving the recognition that we need after the age of 50. And so if I can do that through a podcast and they can take that and put it on their website, they can use it in their social media, they can try to get publicity for themselves from that, then I feel like, we're doing what we're supposed to do, because it is such a generous community and we've been offered so much from other authors, and we do want to pay it forward.
Well, we want to help everybody. I kind of feel like I was the precursor in the book world to American Idol, because, before American Idol came along, how did people get discovered in as musical artists or whatever artistry they had? There was now, you can be from some itty bitty town in Mississippi or Kansas or Washington State and get on. In fact, my best friend Heidi just told me she's got a young man in her college voice class back in Kansas that just got picked for Vietnamese Idol. I go, and she's already had one guy from Pakistan that got first runner up. She's had two people in her voice classes that went on to international are going on to international. See, there's all kinds of things we can do. You think one, little soccer mom with two kids and a book reader can't do anything. I just hope it's, I love this. I mean, I do it for nothing, I love it. I just hope that everybody remembers that anybody can do this. I mean, you just have to have a passion for it. And you're doing the podcast, and Laura's doing the Writers Con, and all of you are coming forward, and hopefully we're creating a community where we're all becoming like a sisterhood, empowering women and men too, because my guys, I mean, I had Jeffrey Lawrence here last week and Casey Coers, and they were just like, yeah, we're going to be a girlfriend weekend. We're not going to miss it, man. Nobody even knew about my book until I got, joined you guys. And it's taken us a little while to get the guys on board, Mike. But, the thing about it is you're very well received when we do the events live. Hopefully 25 will go back live, and hopefully everybody will sign up, but we need people to sign up. So sign up today. And so you're working on this other book, you're doing the podcast. What do you do for fun? What do you do in your free time?
I travel to see grandchildren. I just had my first great grandchild I didn't have him, but his
No.
mother had him, and so that's
Great.
been fun. So I I travel to see the grandchildren, and I ride my bike when it's not too hot here in Texas, and try to stay in shape and work on my health, because when I found my birth mother, I found out that there were health conditions in the family that I needed to be aware of. And that was one of the reasons I searched and found her. So I'm trying to stay ahead of that DNA that I received. And also, Laura and I are waiting to hear when the writers' strike is over in LA, because these books are being shopped around to studios out there. So I hope that one of the streaming services, that's gobbling up all this material, will pick it up, and you might see a series out of one of these books.
It'd be really awesome. And believe me, from everything, most of the films I'm watching now are foreign because there isn't, I mean, the only movie that I've seen lately that I absolutely adored, and I've been now twice, is Barbie. And I know everybody's thinking, Barbie, you gotta go, people, because it's not what you think. And I just took my best friend and we had the best time. We laughed our heads off. But we used to play Barbies together. So, it
You
just
know,
makes
the
sense.
problem I think with turning your book over to a studio is that you lose control over it, and the script writer gets to do whatever they want to with it. So that's kind of scary for those of us who love our stories, and a script writer can just take an idea from the story and not even follow the book. So that's why, we always say the book was better, because they don't have to follow the book.
You guys need to talk to Marcy Henna, who's a filmmaker out of Austin, because she did her own books. She directed, produced, and did her own movies. And her last film was based on her book, was the last film Cloris Leachman was in. It's a Southern story. Oh, it was fantastic. Marcy Henna, and she is an absolute doll. And she just thought, I'll just make my own movie. And she did. And the Killers of the Flower Moon is coming out, and that all was filmed during the time of COVID. And Heidi was actually supposed to be an extra in it. It was done in Oklahoma with Leonardo DiCaprio, Brendan Fraser, and Martin Scorsese is directing it. But she got cut for her role because they decided to film in closed studio in LA. So yeah, we're all ready for the writer's strike to be over, but we want the writers to be compensated for their talent. And actually, we should really be paying attention, because um, probably need to be doing this for authors, because the AI is coming and it's looking grim. Jeffrey Lawrence is going to do a panel on it at Girlfriend Weekend on AI. So get ready. He went to one at the London Book Festival. So getting you lots of information. So tell us, the grandchildren are so important. I mean, I drop everything. Family first is always my motto. And now it's number two is education. But being a lifelong learner is a lot of fun. And you taught for how long?
I taught everything from kindergarten to the university level. And so I taught for quite a few years, but I had lots of other careers. I think I get bored easily and I have to try everything. I tell my children, I have placed some of my DNA inside you so that you will be able to do whatever you want to do. Because when I would walk into a job interview, I would hand all of these pages over to the person interviewing me, and I would say, I have to apologize in advance for how long this resume is, but I can do just about anything you want me to do, because I have. And and my children say, I just don't know what I want to do. And I'll say, well, try everything. You can
That's
change. You can do whatever you want to do.
You don't have to have the same career your whole life anymore. In fact, follow your passions, go and do something, take a risk. And failure is the only way you learn anyway. I've had lots of failures in my life, but I wouldn't change a thing. because I wouldn't be with you right now, Julie, on your birthday. So thank you for coming on your birthday. Let's open this up to everybody and let's have some conversation. Does anybody have a question for Julia or a comment? Just speak up.
Well, I had a chance to go to King Ranch. One of my best friends from from Bellingham ended up moving back to Texas, and she was the program director. So a friend I had never been to, I stayed at North Padre. I had a friend who was living there, and we got to go through the ranch, but we had a special tour because she could open all the gates. And I think one of the most interesting places was the weaving room. And she was able to, open up the door and go in this place where they have made saddle blankets for, I don't know, 140 years or something like that. I saw my first Roadrunner, except the Roadrunner was in the tree, so that didn't count.
I've never seen a Roadrunner in a tree.
It was in a tree. I think I have a shot of it, but it was amazing. I also was impressed that it's a major flyway. So did you ever go parts of that too? Because they have so many birds that are on that ranch. She also showed me the special breed of cows it was just amazing just to go through gates. She could just go through gates and even go back to one of the original farmhouses, which was like a mansion. So it was really, really interesting to see to be able to go to King Ranch like that.
And the place, was there from the 1800s, how they amassed that much land and had that many cowboys living on the property. They have all those homes for the cowboys and have the beautiful old home where the family lived. And now it's still held within the family, but there are about 200 heirs, who can float in and out and use the house as kind of a hotel to stay there. But yeah, they bred their own horses. They're all kinds of King Ranch. You see it on a Ford pickup. So King
That's
Ranch,
right.
widely
King Ranch.
known now.
They have their own line of products and they have their own truck. It's kind of like, the big homes in Europe that were palaces by the royal families have now become, tour homes, or you can stay there, or, because quite frankly, the upkeep on these things is expensive. Yeah. So it's really amazing. Well, what a great story. And,
So,
go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
so I have a question. I'm tremendously intrigued by the premise of your book that and I've been to Mesa Verde, so I have a really clear picture of what that might mean. Can you tell us how far along are you? It's not published yet, correct?
It's published.
Oh, it's
Yeah, it's
already
out.
out. Oh, perfect.
The fifth daughter of Thorn Ranch.
Yeah, you can
All right.
order it. What's the best place to go? You have a website?
I do have a website that tells you all about it. It's juliadaily.com, but it's available everywhere books are sold. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere.
Yep. It's
Well,
really great. And yeah.
that's going to the top of my TBR pile,
Well, thank you. I hope you
because
enjoy it.
Some of the things
I really think it's a neat premise. So.
Some of the things I really like, though, is that you describe the area so vividly that I just felt like I was there. I could see it, smell it, feel it. Is it that King Ranch that was that kind of the basis for it, or what was your inspiration for the ranch that you gave to your heroine there?
Well, we live in the hill country, and the ranches here are a little different than they are in South Texas. But when I went to King Ranch, that's why I went, because the ranch is really a character of its own. It is a character in the book, and I wanted it to be as accurate as possible. Just like when I wrote about the maternity home in New Orleans, I asked my birth mother, "Did I get the setting right?" And when you were there, and she said yes, except that you made it a little nicer, the people a little nicer to your characters than they were to us. So I wanted to do the same with the ranch. And when you're there and you can just see, how dusty it is or how the cowboys are working. And I wanted to turn that cowboy stereotype kind of on its head, because the owners of this ranch through 5 generations have been women. So the women own the ranch, and they don't change their names when they marry. They keep their name because they're known as the Roses of Rosales Ranch, of the the Thorn Ranch. So this is the 5th daughter who is trying to decide if she wants to own this property and be responsible for that much property. And so, yeah, when I visited there, I got to see, just like Janet said, what it looked like and what it smelled like, and how I could envision it being through the years there. The script writer who has looked at that book wanted to take it back. And I had thought about, going back. You and I have talked, Laura, about going back and the first daughter of Thorn Ranch, back with the Spanish land grants and beginning there with the property and coming forward. And that's what the script writer did, because I think Yellowstone is so popular right now, and all of these prequels, back in the 1800s and all of that they're talking about. I think that's where the script writer wanted to start. So, but yeah, the ranch is definitely a character in the book.
Well, if you write a good story, people want it to continue, whether you go back or forward. They just want more. I mean, I hung on the edge of my seat for The Outlander, but good for you. That's great. Now, when I went to the Texas Book Festival, will you be there at the Texas Book Festival this coming year?
I was there last year.
You were there last year. Okay. When I went to the Texas Book Festival, I asked everybody a question in the audience. I said, how many of you as parents grew up in the city? And, raise your hands. And how many of you, your grandparents grew up in the country? And just about, I would say, over 75% of them, their grandparents were raised in the country. And that just goes to show you how this country has changed, pretty fast, because I think a lot of people are going out of the city and going back to the country. Their suburbs or whatever. But what has been your family story about, you got to meet your biological mother. What was her background? Anything about that? Were they country folks or?
Well, they lived on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and
Oh.
she met a young man who was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, and they fell in love. One thing led to another, and she became pregnant. Well, they couldn't marry because in the 50s, she was Catholic, he was Jewish, and that was unheard of that they ever would marry. So he was called home to Chicago to meet a nice Jewish girl, and she was sent to the maternity home to relinquish, relinquish me for adoption. So while she was being counseled, after she gave me up for adoption by a Jesuit priest, he fell in love with her and gave up the priesthood to marry her. So it was a great story. I could write another book about all of that. But then they traveled around.
I was just about to say, I think we've found your next book, Julia.
They traveled around the world teaching English to other countries. I think her other sons were born in Saudi Arabia or, one of those countries over there where they were teaching English. So it's a very interesting story.
Now that is a story I haven't heard before.
Yeah. And my adoptive family, I grew up, they brought me to Mississippi to grow up in South Mississippi. And my father was in the highway construction business, but he loved his farm. He had a farm, we call in Mississippi what would be a ranch in Texas, a farm in Mississippi. And he grew large fields of watermelons and, all kinds of vegetables. And we spent the summers putting up vegetables for the winter. and in the freezer or canning those. So when I make jelly at home, I think about my father. And I would tell my children, if anything happens, if we have a zombie attack or anything, get to granddaddy's house, because he can live off the land. He can hunt, he can fish, he can grow a garden. And, the rest of us don't know how to do that anymore. So,
So you actually you do your own canning? That's one thing I did not learn from my grandmothers.
Oh,
And
she had us out at that outdoor kitchen, canning beans and tomatoes and making soup and salsa and everything else. But, we've lost that art. And, when I think about how we could have a disruption of our food chain, and what would we do? We just wouldn't be able to make it like they did years ago. And that's one thing that distresses me about the breaking up of all of these ranches here in Texas, or even when I worked in Mississippi with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. They couldn't get their young family members to go out and to harvest the cane that they made the baskets out of, and to learn how to continue that art, that craft. And young people just aren't learning the family traditions, whether it's on a farm or whether it's on a reservation. We're losing a lot of our family traditions, and I grieve over that.
well, my grandmother and great grandmothers taught me how to cook and bake pies particularly. But I remember watching them. My grandmother would take my grandfather's old wife beater shirts, of course they were clean, and she would strain the fruit, to make the wild cherry jams and all this stuff. And I can remember I thought that was funny. But boy, on the table was at least 12 jars of something,
Yeah.
Piccadilly and corn.
Oh, my grandmother was a fabulous cook, a great Southern cook. And all of the men would come in for lunch from the construction business. And that's when they had the big spread. They'd have 3 or 4 meats. They'd have 5 or 6 vegetables. They'd have cornbread and biscuits and peach cobbler. And that's how they would eat at lunch. And then at supper, they might just have a bowl of cereal, to have for supper. But those were spreads that I'll never forget. And the way that we used to eat back then has set me up for a lifetime of fighting my weight.
Yeah, I know, but they worked it off too. They really did. So, anybody else have a comment or a question?
Julia, I really enjoyed your second book, and I know you touched on this, but you saw the ancient, call them condos, and you brought them to Texas. What inspired you to make them a part of this story in particular?
Well, Kathy, before I did the DNA kit, I thought I was Native American. I told everyone all of my life, my parents thought, because look at these cheekbones. I thought that I was Native American. I was like Elizabeth Warren telling everybody that I was Native American all my life. And when I did the DNA kit, then I realized I'm half Jewish, not Native American. But
So close.
but when I went to see Mesa Verde National Park and stood before those magnificent structures that people built back in these ancient times without any machinery, I mean, I was just overwhelmed, and I thought these were my people, and I felt a spiritual experience there. And so I wanted to expound on that and take those to Texas and write about these people. And in the book, she is captured by this tribe, and she says, "What are you doing on my land?" And the chief of the tribe looks at her and says, "We've been here a lot longer than you. What are you doing on my land?" So I really felt that I wanted to talk about, the tug of war that we've always had in this country and in any other country about the possession of land, and taking people off of their property, you know. So that was my inspiration, is I thought I was Native American at that point.
I thought the same thing. I've been told all my life I was Cherokee. I
That's
have
what I was. I was
absolutely
Cherokee too,
nothing.
Kathy.
Nothing. I found out I had, you know, European and Scott Irish and Norwegian. Okay, so nothing Native American showed up for me.
Yeah.
But they've updated it now. They can do even more in depth. So we probably need to do it again, because I do have an ancestor that's name was Light Feather, which is,
Well, my birth grandmother told my mother that her grandmother, my great grandmother, was Cherokee. And so, I
yeah.
mean, those stories came from somewhere. There, I thought that there was bound to be some truth in them somewhere.
There wasn't a lick in my family. So anyway, anybody else want to make a comment or?
I was just going to say, I totally believe that there is a place like that in Texas, because, you know, as an undergraduate, I had the privilege of working at the Smithsonian in the anthropology department. And my thesis for my degree in history was on the Comanche Indians as prisoners of war. And I actually got to meet, I worked in the archives there too, but part of that was Paladura Canyon. No one knew about that until about 1875. It was totally a secret. And Comanche were going down there all the time. I think their Kiowa and Cheyenne friends would go there too. And part of it was green in there. They could have their horses in there, and there's running water and all that. But it was a total secret till about I think the spring of 1875 is when Paladura Canyon. Unfortunately, what happened after that was pretty awful, but it was a total secret. So I totally believe that you could have something like that down your way. And and King Ranch is so huge.
There are a lot of these family ranches in this area, and they have caves, and they have a lot of the paintings from the Native Americans in those caves, and they try to keep them secret so that people won't come on their property and look at those, you know, and destroy their property. But there are a lot. They're definitely in this area. We're in this area.
Yeah. I know when I was there, it was August. Can you imagine how, and we went on the trails walking, and it's incredible. If you ever get a chance, you have to go there. So, and I know you'll want to after you read this book. So thank you so much, Julia. And I hope you get a little bit of birthday cake somewhere down the line, huh?
Thank you, Kathy. Thank all of you for being here tonight. This has been real special. I'll remember this birthday.
Well, we'll remember you, and everybody share. This is all being recorded onto the Pulpwood Queen channel. It'll be up tomorrow morning before I go to class. And I just want to tell you that we do this every week, and you learn a new story every week, and it's always amazing. Thank you. Thank you for coming on your birthday. That, you know, applause, everybody. Big applause for you. And any last words from you, Julia? Anything you want to share now that you've crossed that big line? You don't look it. You don't look 30.
Well, I haven't crossed it yet. This is my last year of the 60s, and that's why I dressed in my hippie garb yesterday. I'm celebrating the last year of the 60s. So I still have one more year before I cross the major line into the 70s, but then we'll start celebrating the 70s next year instead of the 60s. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for every year and every experience, even though some of them were not fun. I've learned a lot. I hope that I am much more self-aware. I hope that I have many more years to live. You know, I think that some of us are privileged to grow old because not everybody's afforded that privilege. So I'm really grateful for every single year and every single friend like y'all. So thank you so much for showing up and for being part of this wonderful community of Pulpwood Queens.
Well, thank you. And go to juliadaly.com. She's up on the web. You can read all about her story, get her books. And she's got, the one book is behind her. You can't see the cover, but it's right behind her, but it'll be up on the website. Thank you all for joining me from near and far away, fellow Texan, hook 'em horns. I'm here at UT Tyler. So y'all have a great, great week. And we'll see you next Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. Okay. Adios to everybody. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.